Welcome. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025, and we are here for the public hearing on the Budget Adjustment Act. And so I want to welcome everybody to our public hearing. Every year we hold one public hearing for this bill. The purpose of the BAA is to review the current year budget and make adjustments as needed to tweak costs and rebalance state spending. This ensures that we keep our budget in balance and spend taxpayers' dollars in ways that support Vermonters across the state. The Budget Adjustment Act is generally not used for new programs or big policy changes. For the public hearing, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Megan, is that right? Megan will use the timer and you'll see it on the screen. So when you're sitting here, you'll see it. And those of you that are on Zoom, I'm told you'll also be able to see it. So that shouldn't be a problem. And then Jim Harrison to my left here will raise his hand to let you know when you have 10 seconds left. And then Representative Tiff Blumley to my right will call the names of who is up immediately and who's on deck to speak next. So you'll be ready for that. If you are one of the people testifying on Zoom today, you will automatically be muted. When it's your turn, Aaron will promote you. So please accept the promotion and then you can unmute yourself and be sure your video is on so we don't have technical delays. If this is your first public hearing, please note that our job of legislators is simply to listen to your testimony. So this is not a dialogue and a discussion that way, the way other testimony is. So it's your chance to tell us what you're thinking. So we won't be asking questions during the hearing. And finally, if your time is up or you didn't get a chance to testify, you have more you'd like us to know, please feel free to submit written testimony. We look over all of it and we read it. We'll be discussing it all as a committee. Most likely tomorrow. The email link for those of you that signed up was in the confirmation email you were sent, or you can submit it directly to Erin Pedley, our committee assistant, and then we'll be reading all of the testimony. So that is all of the information I have. Thank you so much for participating. And Tiff, do you want to tell us who the first two people are?
Sure. And if I mispronounce your name, please correct that for the record. First up is Mary Kate Molman, and second is Frank Knack. Right, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mary Kate Molman. I am the Director for Vermont Public Policy with Bi-State Primary Care Association. We are an organization that supports Vermont's federally qualified health centers. We also represent and support Vermont Free and Referral Clinics and Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. I am here to speak in support of the governor's budget adjustment request for increasing funding for FQHCs, the federally qualified health centers. FQHCs provide comprehensive care to 1 in 3 Vermonters, regardless of their ability to pay, regardless of their insurance status. These services include primary care, mental health, substance use disorder treatment, oral health, vision care, care coordination, financial support, transportation, access to nutritional food, and translation services. The rate adjustment in the BAA is based on the Medicare Economic Index and is annually applied by DVA to FQHC rates. In establishing FQHC rates, federal statute recognized the need to update our rates for inflation annually, and this adjustment accomplishes just that. FQHCs are extremely fragile right now. We had one member close a site in the Bellows Falls area. While this was a tough but necessary decision, it left the area with few primary care options. We also have seen 2 dental sites consolidate for financial purposes. Multiple FQHCs has less than 20 days cash on hand, and several have had to cut services and staff. Another member is considering a variety of financial options, including bankruptcy. While we at Bi-State are looking at every option available to bring stability to FQHCs in Vermont, this MEI adjustment, which comes to about $326,000 in state general funds, is critical to supporting our safety net providers that support our most vulnerable Vermonters. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next up is Frank Knack. And on deck is Allie Richards.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Frank Knack. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing and Homelessness Alliance of Vermont. For those not familiar, we wear two hats. We're a result of the merger of the Affordable Housing Coalition, the Vermont Coalition in Homelessness. We also serve as the collaborative applicant for the Balance of Fate Continuum of Care, which is one of two federally mandated homelessness response systems in Vermont. So we serve all of Vermont minus Chittenden County and work closely with Chittenden County. I'm here to talk about 4 different requests. We've sent you a letter that outlines these. But first, to give you a little context, so right now in Vermont, we have about 3,500 unhoused people. We know that's an undercount. That's just based on the PIC count from last year. And we have a shelter network in Vermont of 585 beds. So a huge gap between the available shelter and the number of unhoused people. To fill that gap, we have the General Assistance Emergency Housing Program for the most vulnerable Vermonters. So those are Vermonters who are seniors, people with disabilities, people with children, et cetera. We are facing a crisis on April 1st when the winter weather protections extend or end, and we're looking at potentially hundreds of Vermonters who will be unsheltered at that point into a homelessness response system that has no capacity. And so we are urging this committee to allocate $2.3 million to extend the winter weather protections through the end of this fiscal year so that we have time as the legislature has time to develop a response system to meet the need in Vermont. Going to the actual solution, so that's the immediate crisis. On the solution side, we outlined 3 different spending requests to actually fund affordable housing in Vermont, which is the solution to Vermont's housing crisis. So $30 million for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which will produce up to 300 homes. $2.8 million for the Developmental Disability Housing Initiative, which provide 10 residents with access to appropriate housing, and $25 million for VHCB, or for the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency, for programs that they have longstanding success with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Allie Richards, and on deck is Ivy.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair Shai, Vice Chair Harrison, members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Allie Richards. I'm the CEO of Let's Grow Kids, and our mission is to ensure high-quality, affordable childcare for all who need it in Vermont. And I want to first thank you for passing Act 76, the transformative childcare bill, last session. Today, I'm here to talk about the childcare funding in the FY25 Budget Adjustment Act. Let's Grow Kids and our partners are deeply concerned about the governor's proposal to repurpose millions of dollars that were intended to go to childcare. So I ask that you reject any proposal, starting with this one, that diverts funding from a system that we are just starting to successfully transform. We urge you to continue to make progress towards the goals of Act 76. Your leadership to create this new investment is working to make our state more affordable. And just over the past year, this public investment has led to 1,000 new childcare spaces, 90 new centers opening. 50 of those are family childcare homes, and these are in rural and urban parts of Vermont, from Springfield, Cabot, Swanton, Bennington, Milton, just to name a few. So compared to this time last year, 1,600 more families are enrolled in childcare tuition assistance. And we've heard from hundreds of Vermonters about how they have been positively impacted by this public investment. For example, Rebecca D. from Burlington, her family is now saving nearly $30,000 a year in childcare, and it's allowing her and her husband to stay in the workforce. So while we are making progress, we know these families are out there who are eligible for CCFAP, but either have not heard about their eligibility or have not been able to access the cost savings. We also know that even when a family is deemed eligible for this, they have trouble finding a childcare space in many cases. So we need to be very proactive right now and moving forward to ensure the funding is available and allocated specifically for childcare, and that it reaches as many families and childcare programs as possible. It's really vital to remember that even though with all this progress we have made in Vermont, we still have a childcare crisis. I've included a memo for the committee's review that includes specific recommendations the legislature can use to spend the available funds. One example is we're $1 million shy of complying with federal rules to make sure certain families only pay 7% or less of their income. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll look at your written testimony as well. Appreciate it.
We welcome Ivy Enoch, and on deck is Green Renner on Zoom.
Thank you so much. My name is Ivy Enoch. I live in Burlington, and I'm the SNAP Policy and Training Lead at Hunger Free Vermont. We're a statewide anti-hunger policy advocacy organization. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify to this committee with a request to please direct the Department for Children and Families Economic Services Division to maximize its use of discretionary months in order to significantly reduce the number of SNAP or 3 Squares Vermont participants who fall off the rolls every month and lose their essential food benefits. Nearly 200 people every month are needlessly losing access to their SNAP benefits because DCF is not maximizing their use of discretionary months, which they're authorized by USDA to use. This decision is having severe repercussions for low-income Vermonters and undermining our state's resources. People affected by the loss of their grocery benefits are forced into tougher financial decisions, impacting their well-being and dignity. Using the bank of discretionary months won't add any cost to the state, and it will draw down federal dollars in the form of SNAP benefits to be spent by Vermonters at local grocers. It benefits all to ensure the Department for Children and Families Economic Services Division is maximizing their use of discretionary months to keep more federal dollars in our state and support low-income Vermonters enrolled in SNAP. Thank you so much for your attention to this matter.
Next up is Irene Renner on Zoom, and on deck is Pat Sergey. Sergey. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, we can hear you. So great. Go right ahead, Irene.
For the record, Irene Renner, resident of Essex. My suggestion grows out of the widespread lack of oversight and accountability I witnessed as a state senator these past 2 years. As a member of JITALK, the Technology Oversight Committee, I was presented this dilemma. Should members allow nearly $12 million to be spent on the first implementation step of a poorly planned project? That project may cost upwards of $139 million to complete, according to some state employees. Other staff estimate it will cost up to $200 million or more. I voted no on releasing that money because a trusted JFO contractor and IT specialist reviewed the project. She rated it poor or weak on 7 of 8 measures. 4 JITALK members voted to release that money anyway. 1 member was absent. That money would pay a firm named Guidehouse to stand up the Workday software and propel the project forward. Guidehouse would not, however, assure anyone that the system would meet Vermont's needs at the end of their contract. Workday is a cloud-based, AI-centered software which would replace existing, dependable financial management systems used by at least 5 departments or agencies of Vermont's executive branch. Management has stated that our currently used systems are at end of life. Thus, we should invest in an ERP, an enterprise resource planning system. On the contrary, programmers tell me we need only spend a couple $1 million on upgrades. Then we'll be in compliance without the distraction and waste of a $200 million boondoggle. I'm here to ask you to add language to the BAA to pause the signing of the contract with Guidehouse before it begins work as the state's so-called preferred implementation vendor. Such a contract execution is imminent, and the BAA is the fastest moving bill to which such language could be added. Your legislative peers, as well as the state auditor, need more time to determine whether this $200 million expenditure has met statutory planning requirements. In short, is this a prudent use of that much money? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Pat Sergey, and on deck is Brenda Siegel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pat Sergi, and I work at Capstone Community Action in Barrie. So Capstone is a sponsor of the Child and Adult Care Food Program, which is the CACFP. I am the program coordinator, and I have been at Capstone for 26 years. So please appropriate $182,000 to the Agency of Education to distribute among the child care food program sponsors organization as an incentive to participate as a sponsor of the CACFP for family home child care providers. Being a sponsor comes with many challenges. When I started at Capstone, there were 7 sponsors supporting the child care providers in Vermont. We're down to 3. On October 1st of last year, we took over Franklin and Grand Isle counties because the sponsor in St. Albans no longer wanted to renew their application with the Agency of Education because of the burden of supporting a program when there's not enough admin money to support it. When asked if I would take over the new area, my first thought was, why would I consider doing that? Because we can't afford the financial burden. What changed my mind was when I realized that there's no one else and how important this program is. Providers need this program because it ensures the children in childcare receive nutritious meals and snacks, contributing to their healthy growth and development and helping establish positive eating habits early in life. The program provides access to healthy food for children who may not otherwise receive it. It's especially those from low income and rural families. We are the largest sponsor. We have a very large area. We are in 8 counties right now, and we're hoping to hire someone else because we took on 2 new counties. But at this point, last year, the deficit was $25,000. So please help us out and appropriate $182,000 to the Agency of Education, distribute among the child care food programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Brenda Siegel, and on deck is Sharon Harrington on Zoom.
For the record, I'm Brenda Siegel. I'm the Executive Director of End Homelessness Vermont. We work with people experiencing homelessness at the point of emergency and primarily working ongoing with people living with disabilities and complex needs in emergencies, shelter, and voucher support, and continuing to work with them as they become permanently housed. I'm here to ask your committee to appropriate $2.3 million to extend the winter weather program until June 30th. Last fall, we saw the outcome of an 80-day policy that was presented in the budget that we warned and were worried would create catastrophic outcomes. Our own organization saw 7 deaths in a single week in November. We have seen 7 clients who were hospitalized with hypothermia. We have a client who was brutally raped, and we've had several clients who have been terrorized outside who live in wheelchairs and with disabilities. We cannot let what happened last fall happen again, and the place to do that is the budget adjustment because this happened in the budget. I want to tell you specifically about one client that did spend 2 days outside who is almost completely immobile and who it took a long time to find access to a hotel. In the end, our organization worked with another organization to fund a gap time for him. We were not able to do that for everyone, and we saw the results we did because of this. We feel really strongly that there needs to be a concurrent focus on both housing and emergency shelter. We cannot do one without the other. We cannot do one session and one another session. And so we are asking you to spend this funding, $2.3 million, go over the GA task force recommendations, which have just been submitted, so that the legislature can come up with a good, solid plan moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sharon Harrington on Zoom, and on deck is Karen Harker.
Hello, Sharon.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sharon Harrington, and I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children. Vermont AUIC is the professional association for early childhood educators in Vermont and the state affiliate of the National Association for the Education of Young Children. We administer workforce development and quality support programs. Our mission is to advance equity and excellence in early childhood education, and our workforce is our foundation. Vermont AUIC is deeply concerned about the administration's proposal in the FY 2025 Budget Adjustment Act to reallocate $26 million from its commitment to early childhood education. Act 76 significantly expanded Vermont's Child Care Financial Assistance Program. Thousands more children and families can now access quality, affordable early childhood education, and programs have stable funding streams and can invest in their staff. The continuing success of Act 76 relies on an adequate early childhood education workforce. In 2022, Vermont AUIC found that 86% of Vermont's early childhood education programs face a staffing shortage. Public investment from Act 76 is helping to stop that bleed. It is critical to workforce recruitment and retention that we protect this funding. Instead of directing funds away from early childhood education, we ask that the legislature invest in programs that work by strengthening CCFAP and programs proven to support recruitment and retention. The Early Childhood Educator Student Loan Repayment Assistance Program is a successful retention program with increasing demand. Our youth apprenticeship program is so successful that we have a wait list. Investing in this program builds our future workforce. Finally, workforce retention grants are a simple, powerful tool to retain our early childhood educators. Vermont's early childhood educators are committed to helping our state's children thrive. We need your partnership and support to achieve that vision. Thank you for this opportunity and your time and consideration.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Karen Parker. And on deck is Susan Aronoff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Harker, and I am the Regional Director of Vermont Adult Learning, Windsor County. I'm here representing the Adult Education and Literacy Network today. And our ask today is that you please support the governor's recommended budget adjustments to the adult education and literacy funding totaling around $500,000. The reason for this adjustment is that last year our funding completely changed. Our funding formula changed, high school completion was repealed, and the adult diploma program was put into place. However, the state underestimated the number of students that we were going to serve last year, which is a good problem to have. So this budget adjustment just makes up for the number of students that we served in addition to what the state estimated. Additionally, I'm here to ask that you please include the notwithstanding language that's currently in House Ed and Ledge Council that would allow former high school completion students to graduate according to their signed graduation plans prior to the sunset of high school completion. Basically, what has happened is once high school completion sunsetted and ADP, we are still waiting on policy from the AOE on ADP. So we have a bunch of students who are in limbo. They are waiting to go into the workforce. They are waiting to go to college, and yet they cannot be issued a high school diploma. Allowing them to graduate through the high school completion program using this notwithstanding language that's currently in House Ed would allow these students to continue on with their path forward. So thank you very much for supporting Governor Scott's budget adjustment and the notwithstanding language that you will see shortly related to adult education and literacy.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and now Susan Aronoff has the floor, and on deck is Stephen Whitaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Aronoff. I am the Senior Planner and Policy Analyst for the Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council. That's a bit of a mouthful, so I just want to break that down before I do the testimony. I am a very rare state employee. I'm housed in the Agency of Human Services. However, I'm not state funded. You sometimes see the Developmental Disabilities Council in your line items. We're one of the rare councils. All 50 states have one of us, but we do not receive any state funding. We're entirely federally funded, and God willing, we will continue to receive our federal funding. While we are created by a federal act, and we have a singular mandate, which is we're charged under federal law to engage at the state level in advocacy on behalf of people with disabilities and their families. We estimate, using the federal definition, that's about 86,000 Vermonters, over 5,000 of whom receive Medicaid-funded services, home and community-based services among them. I'm here to ask you to please consider putting $2.8 million into the Budget Adjustment Act to support Champlain Housing Trust's project that's going to create service-supported housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. A couple sessions ago, 2022, the legislature had the wisdom to pass Act 186. It created 3 planning grants. It also funded a study. The study showed we needed 602 at that time units of service-supported housing. The planning grants, people are living in the housing you guys created. It's a beautiful thing. 2 out of the 3 grants are all set. This third project in Burlington needs this $2.8 million. It's less than 25% of the total budget. I thank you for your service and support. I'm available to answer any questions. Katie Tormey, who's up in 2 minutes, will be able to share stories.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and now Stephen Whitaker has a seat, and on deck is Katie Tormey.
Thank you for your time, 2 minutes. I'm here to raise some red flags that you need to be aware of. The two reshuffled committees of jurisdiction on both the House and the Senate side relating to telecommunications and information technology appear to be another year before they get their legs under them with the complex and backlog of near crisis, poorly planned investments. Senator Renner alerted you to one, which has the potential to go hundreds of millions of dollars. And I believe you'll get stuff in the email that will detail the unplanned or the pitfalls there. The Money Committee is the only place where you can quickly pause these initiatives while you get your committees up to speed. So I'm asking you to do that for the ERP system as well that Senator Renner mentioned, and the statewide software-defined wide area network that appears to be running as a charade of a procurement that may have been denied a sole source authorization under Bulletin 3.5. So the bid system did not ever show that RFP out, but yet even the business case required by statute is being claimed to be exempt. So you've got secretaries and commissioners that are playing fast and loose with the statutory planning requirements and the transparency requirements of public records law, which are seriously even denying oversight committee members access, of which I'm not one. But I do a lot of research on y'all's behalf to inform you of these things. And I've been doing that since we first put those protections into law nearly 30 years ago. That independent reviews, business case, life cycle cost analysis of alternatives, et cetera. So I plead with you to take this seriously and support it, even if in draft form. Thank you.
We welcome Katie Tormey, and on deck is Autumn Moan.
Good afternoon, committee chairs and members. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about the dire need for supported housing for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, IDD. My name is Katie Tormey, and I live in Burlington. I'm the mother of a young woman with Down syndrome. Emily's 36 years old, and I'm also a member of the DDHI, the Developmental Disabilities Housing Initiative. We're a parent-led volunteer advocacy group of over 125 parents throughout the state who are working towards the development of stable, service-supported peer residences for our adult children with IDD, many of whom have significant support needs. Since the closure of Brandon 30 years ago and the promise that this population of Vermonters would be housed, cared for, and integrated into their communities, there has been little money invested by the state to see this through. The state has relied on shared living provider model, essentially adult foster care, for 30 years. This model can be isolating with little to no oversight and is never a permanent home. We parents are aging. Who will care for our adult children when we are no longer alive? It is a worry that we parents know all too well. Our children deserve better, and I know that Vermont can do better. The passage of Act 186 in 2022 provided the funding for 3 pilot planning grants to explore new housing models for adults with IDD. 2 out of the 3 projects have been fully funded. The 3rd project, headed by Champlain Housing Trust, is a $6.7 million project involving the renovation and significant addition to an existing building near downtown Burlington, including the installation of an elevator, and will create a home for 10 individuals. This unique model combines permanent affordable housing, individualized support services, and community inclusion. The project is $2.8 million short of being fully funded. That is less than 25% of the total funding. The state has funded the planning of this project. CHT has accessed significant funds from multiple sources for implementation of this project. We are now asking the state for 2.8 million, which will bring us over the finish line.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Autumn Long, and on deck is Amy Fales.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Autumn Moen. I'm the Legislative Policy Lead at Hunger Free Vermont. Thank you for the opportunity to testify to the committee about the request to appropriate $182,000 to the Agency of Education to distribute among the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, sponsor organizations as an incentive to participate as a sponsor of the CACFP for family child care home providers. The CACFP is the most equitable way to provide nutritious meals and snacks in early childhood education settings. In order to participate in the CACFP, family child care homes are required to have a CACFP sponsor organization. Without this sponsor organization, family child care homes who serve over 3,500 Vermont children would not be eligible to serve nutritious meals and snacks through this program. In 2024, Vermont went from having 5 CACFP sponsor organizations to only 3. Those 3 sponsor organizations are responsible for administering the CACFP across the entire state. And all 3 organizations have admitted they're in a state of financial crisis because the funding they receive from the federal government does not come close to covering the costs associated with administering the CACFP. Thank you again for your consideration of our request to appropriate $182,000 to the Agency of Education to distribute amongst the Child and Adult Care Food Program sponsor organizations as an incentive to participate as a sponsor for this program. Without CACFP sponsors, many children in Vermont would not have access to nutrition in their early childhood education programs. You can have the most qualified program directors, but if children are showing up hungry or not showing up at all because they're hungry, they are unable to access learning and development. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and next up is Amy Fales on Zoom, and on deck is Kirsten Dunn, also on Zoom.
Hello.
Kristen.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. My name is Amy Fales, and I am the Nutrition and Education Department Manager at Brock Community Action. We are a sponsor of the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, in Rutland, Bennington, and Addison counties. I have come today to ask that the committee please appropriate $182,000 to the Agency of Ed to distribute among the remaining sponsoring organizations as an incentive to continue to sponsor the CACFP. Last year, our funding shortfall was nearly $26,000, leaving our organization to subsidize the program with other grants and funding sources. The current fiscal year's shortage is projected to be about the same. Continued shortfalls of this magnitude would likely cause our organization to no longer sponsor the CACFP, leaving providers, children, and families without access to this valuable program. Last year, we provided over 156,000 meals to 469 individual children and distributed $285,000 in reimbursement funds to childcare providers through the CACFP. And with food insecurity at its highest, the meals and snacks that are provided to children through the CACFP are more important than ever. The impact of losing access to this program could not be overstated. Cassidy from Pownell writes, the CACFP has helped me to create a more diverse menu because I have the extra funds needed each month to spend rather than creating simpler, less nutritious meals. Deb from Bennington writes, CACFP funding has helped and supported my home child care to provide the most nutritional meals and snacks that come and serve children daily. They go home with full bellies and happy faces. Committee members, I plead with you to appropriate $182,000 to the Department of Ed to distribute amongst the CACFP organizations to help with the funding shortfall that we now experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Kristen Dunn on Zoom, and on deck is Amanda Garces.
Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Dunn. I'm the Executive Director of Mary Johnston Children's Center in Middlebury. I'm here today to urge you not to take away the essential funds that were meant for families and childcare programs. Act 76 is still reaching the families and programs it's intended for, and will continue to do so in the months ahead. Our programs have experienced incredible shifts because of Act 76, and I think it's important to understand those. We're super thankful for them, but it's also important to understand they have not yet had a chance to reach their full potential. Family burdens have been reduced. They are able to work or enter the workforce and afford high quality care for their children. We've been able to expand, like many others around the state, by opening a new toddler classroom and exploring other ways to meet the need for young children. Prior to Act 76, none of our staff were in school, none of our educators. And now over 60% of them are in school working toward degrees and credentials. This has been motivated by the promise of better compensation. And we've been able to incrementally increase our wages as more families apply for CCFAP. Our teachers are talking about their future, and they're talking about their future in early childhood in Vermont. As an organization that houses a child care financial assistance for Addison County, we see new families applying every day. And we know that there will be a significant influx of applicants this spring in preparation for summer programming. There is an opportunity to protect and elevate what Act 76 has only just begun to provide. The dust hasn't even settled yet. Please consider expanding eligibility for families and don't cut this work short. It deserves serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristen.
Next up is Amanda Garces, and on deck is Molly Dugan.
Let's go, please.
Buenas tardes. Thank you. My name is Amanda Garces. I am the Director of Policy, Education, and Outreach for the Vermont Human Rights Commission. Happy to be here today. As you know, the mission of the Vermont Human Rights Commission is to promote full civil and human rights in Vermont. The commission enforces the laws over which it has jurisdiction through investigations, conciliations, and litigation, as well as providing education and training. It develops and advances policies and legislation related to the protection of the most vulnerable Vermonters. For the coming fiscal year, our BAA request is so little, it's $33,137, cover critical expenses so we can continue the vital work of serving our community. This amount includes funding to address unexpected costs such as turnover savings, necessary computer upgrades, and unforeseen IT expenses. This amount is reflected in the government's recommended budget adjustment in Section 8. However, at the heart of our request today is the urgent need to meet the overwhelming demand for our services. Therefore, we're requesting an additional $62,000 beyond what is recommended by the governor, bringing our total BAA request to $97,137. This funding is crucial to support two vital positions that were not recommended in the governor's budget. We hope you will consider adding them as they are absolutely essential to our ability to serve those in need. I'm going to talk fast. I want to make clear that these two positions are a stopgate measure. We are in urgent need to fully address the scope of our work. We are behind. However, we are requesting a total of 7 additional positions in H38 for next fiscal year. But we really need these positions now. We are facing an overwhelming flood of cases and we simply do not have the resources. As someone who worked directly in the community, it is heartbreaking to turn people away. I really beg you to let us have this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Molly Dugan, and on Zoom on deck is Kelly Carroll.
Good afternoon. My name is Molly Dugan, and I work for Cathedral Square. Cathedral Square is a nonprofit developer of affordable housing, an operator of 2 licensed affordable assisted living communities, and the statewide administrator for SASH. We have been developing permanently affordable housing for since 1977, housing with services, and we currently have about 1,300 residents. Cathedral Square operates as part of a network of developers across the state committed to meeting the state's housing needs by building and operating permanently affordable housing. It is for this reason that I am here today to first thank you for the incredible focus and investment you all as legislators have provided in recent years to address this crisis. And second, to request that you keep that commitment going by allocating $30 million for permanently affordable housing production through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board in the BAA. This additional funding for permanent affordable housing is essential because Vermonters need homes. And the nonprofit Affordable Housing Network has a pipeline of housing communities ready to develop to provide homes for Vermonters. The challenge is that the housing network has potential projects that require up to $50 million from Vermont Housing Conservation Board when the Conservation Board has only $13 million available until the end of the 2025 fiscal year. If funded, these requests will create hundreds of new homes for Vermonters all across the state and preserve affordable housing, protecting tenants from housing loss. Importantly, the state funds that flow through VHCB leverage a huge amount of non-state money, making your investment in VHCB a great value to the state. Cathedral Square and our nonprofit developer colleagues across the state have a proven record of not only creating and preserving permanently affordable housing, but spurring economic development, addressing homelessness, providing workforce housing and supportive housing for our most vulnerable. Please support $30 million to VHCB.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and now we'll hear from Kelly Carroll on Zoom. And as I look at this, our last participant is Tamara Hodge. Oh,
I
okay.
have Zoom for her. as well.
Okay. All right. Kelly Carroll?
Hello, I'm a resident of Bennington and my daughter Emily Hammer was murdered 4 years ago this past weekend. I'm here to advocate for more mental health related services, especially where criminal justice and mental health intersect, and encourage you to add additional funding to the Department of Public Safety. I hear about the Situation Table, a program designed to immediately help individuals in crisis. Many with mental health components in 5 communities across the state, and we need to give our communities the tools to make them successful. The November 2024 AHS Legislative Report on Competency Restoration Fiscal Estimates states that there's approximately 200 individuals around the state who represent a public safety risk and are receiving home or community-based services. Vermont's court system has multiple repeat offenders, some with hundreds of law enforcement encounters, and many with a mental health related issues. I think about the thousands of dollars these repeat cases waste and all of those victims and how intervention may have changed outcomes. I wonder what if there had been a situation table 5 years ago before he murdered my Emily, and if my Emily, like so many other mental health related murder victims in Vermont, could still be with us if this program had been in place. And I can think of at least 8 recent high profile Vermont murder victims whose alleged killers probably would have come across a situation table. Everyone is concerned about costs, but you can't put a cost on a life. The situation table gives the communities the tools that they need, but the administrative support is the toolbox that keeps all of those tools organized so they can be effectively and efficiently utilized. I ask you to include funding in the Department of Public Safety for administrative support for the 5 communities utilizing the situation table program. The Department of Public Safety can distribute the funds as they see fit. It's better to pay for it up front before we've lost another Vermonter. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
And apologize about the video.
It's okay, thanks.
And our last speaker is Tamara Hodge on Zoom.
Hi.
Tamara.
Hi, my name is Tamara Hodge. I work for End Homelessness Vermont, and I am here today to ask you to extend winter weather rules for people experiencing homelessness until June 30th. I am going to read some comments on behalf of my clients, but I want to share a little bit about myself as well and my story. I started working for End Homelessness Vermont and the Good Samaritan Haven in November of 24. Prior to that, I was in the hotel program myself and was a client of End Homelessness Vermont. I left the hotel program in September, just before my 80 days ran out. I'm a mother of 3, and we lost our housing due to constructive eviction. We're so thankful to have found our home just before our 80 days were due to end at the hotel. There are so many families just like mine who I now have the opportunity of working with, so many individuals living with disabilities, and so many who are doing absolutely everything they can to find housing, and there just really isn't anything for them. If winter weather is not extended for all people who meet eligibility guidelines, all of whom are vulnerable, then we will see more horrible outcomes, more families on the street, and more of our neighbors and community members living outside. So the first comment I have here is from a client of ours. His name is Teddy. Hi, my name is Teddy. I'm 39 years old and experiencing homelessness. I work full time and have been doing everything that I can to find permanent housing of any type. When my 30 days ended, I fell into a severe state of depression, which led me to call out of work, and that spiraled into severe anxiety that could have resulted in a loss of my job and ultimately with no place to live. I got back into the motel program in January, and since then, I have been able to get my depression and anxiety under control. I also live with severe asthma, and it gets much worse and way more dangerous with extreme temperatures, both high and low. My mental and physical health would be in significant danger if this program were to end. I know that it's not just me, but there are people in this program who all deserve and need to be stable in shelter. Please extend the winter weather until June 30th so we all have more of a chance for stability and ultimately for survival.
Thank you very much, Tamara. If there's more, please submit written testimony. So we appreciate that. That wraps up everybody. We really appreciate all of you coming and making your providing testimony. Again, if you want to provide written testimony, additional, if you have other things to say, please submit it to Erin as soon as possible because we'll be starting to go over this tomorrow. And so we appreciate that. Committee, I'll turn to you for a moment now and let you know that we'll be on the floor at 3, and then we have the ethics and decorum training. That is our last training. I confirmed that. In the morning, we'll start at 9, and we'll be reviewing the information from our standing committees, and hopefully you're getting that information by the end of today. We also have the Agency of Education coming in tomorrow at 10, and Department of Labor is coming in. And then after lunch, we're going to start on markup, what we call markup for the budget. And what we're going to be looking at, because there's lots and lots of pieces of the budget, both in the spreadsheet, and I may actually have a new spreadsheet from Emily by then to check with Maria on that. I have a draft, but I'm not sure that that's the one we're going to use. So you can start to look at your areas and say, what am I good with that we can close? So we'll start to go through, and there are going to be holes because there are some things we aren't going to know the answers to right away. We have the governor's budget speech next week, for example. But there are some things we can say, oh yeah, that's fine. And so we can just stop thinking about those and we'll close it. And Maria will be here to mark those off so we know. So that's how we're going to start looking, which means we're going to go through things more than once. But we'll start on Friday, and there may be some easy things that we can close in any of your areas. And if you have any questions about any of that, let me know, or let Tim or Tiff or Jim, not Jim or Tiff or Tim or whatever. Anyway, and if you need language, let's get that going as soon as possible. And you can we'll find out from Maria whether they can draft it, Grady can draft it, or whether you need Ledge Council. It sounds like we have at least one thing coming over from House Education. I think Trevor may be working on some language for something, or we're going to get something about the licenses, or maybe we're getting that from Ways and Means. Anyway, if you think you have language, let's get that going as well. So we can start to move on things and close up where we can. And that's what we have for now. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about any of this? And then we'll go over what we heard also in the testimony. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll have written testimony as well. So you can start. Erin, is some of that up posted now? Some of the written?
Yes, I'm in the process of posting all the rest.
Okay,
as well.
So you can take a look at what's there. So we're sure that we read all the testimony that people have given to us. So, any questions?
Will we have an opportunity? I know, for example, that the DCF budget is being
hotly debated in human services, and I'm wondering if there will be time next week to invite certain chairs where maybe their asks are significantly different from the governor's recommend.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, so in the past, the chair of human services has come and spoken to us because there's so many moving parts there and it gets pretty complicated. So we'll probably have her come in and speak. I don't know whether there'll be anybody else. Yes.
So in the case of using an example of today, we've been listening to the administration's proposal, and Commissioner Gresham said, well, there's just $26 million from the child care.
Yeah.
So whether they refer to it as a surplus or whatever, but and then people testified today, say, don't take that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to be able to will we have time to have a better understanding of now to go back and say, well, what were you talking about this being a surplus, or what would it mean for it to stay in those funds?
Right. So yes, and I've been working with JFO, who is going to actually put together a memo explaining it, because it actually hasn't been very well explained. And I can explain part of it, but I can't explain the other part well enough to but part of it is caseload and utilization. Just like with Medicaid, right? We look at, there's a consensus and we look at caseload and we adjust up or down as with caseload. So that is part of it. I'm not going to go any further because I will bumble whatever the other part is. I just know it. So until I get that from JFO, I'm going to stop there. But that to me is something that's the normal course of business. JFO is involved in that consensus expenditure piece. And just like with Medicaid, people get together and they make assumptions on what's happening and what they're seeing and what they think the uptake is going to be. And then they say we need to adjust it up or down based on that. And that's what this is happening right now. It doesn't affect the base. So I can tell you that much. It's not affecting for next year. We're just talking about the rest of this year. Are we actually going to need one-time money for that? So that's as far as I can go until but we'll be getting some information from them, and then we'll have more of a conversation as we need to. And I would say that I was sort of taking notes as people were talking with testimony, and several of you have various pieces of, they're your areas. So it might be worth further exploration in some cases if we aren't already doing that, to just check things out a little bit further. Anything else? Am I missing anything, Maria?
No.
Okay. Okay. Lynn.
Yeah, we had several people talk about the developmental disability housing initiative, which is something we had two pilots and we have one more pilot that has not been built. I know they put in a request to the governor for the big bill, but this is the intellectually and developmentally disabled.
Right, we put in some money for 3 projects.
Yes.
And two are done, and this is the third one that's on its
I don't know
way
if
being
the
done.
EAA is the right place to put it, but this is a highly expensive, highly vulnerable population, mostly being taken care of by family.
That's right.
We're all aging out.
Right. Right. And so I was writing, that was one of the ones I wrote. I don't know whether that Tiff or Dave or both of you, that's my guess, is it's you guys.
It's kind of I think it's.
So I think if you.
But the money would go to Dale.
And who has Dale? Is that
But Dale would
You have
contract
Dale.
with CHT in this particular case. I mean, we'll talk.
Yeah.
But it is I think the money would go to Dale.
Okay. So more to come on that. And yes, so those are some of the questions you may want to ask. Do they need the money before the end of the fiscal year, or can it wait? And maybe it can. I mean, that's the thing. And so those are the questions that we'll need to ask.
So there's 2 projects. Those 2 are completed.
2 are completed.
Third one's in progress.
Right. Right. And we only put 5 million in or something like that for the 3 projects. So we knew it wasn't all the 3. Yeah. So we knew it wasn't all the money that was going to be needed. And we didn't know what the projects were going to be at the time. Go ahead.
The other thing I'll just throw out there, which is the obvious, is we don't know any extra spending decisions that we make. What does that do fiscal year 26 budget in terms of one-time expenditures? For example, there were some requests for housing money. If it's in the governor's recommend for the fiscal year 26 budget as one-time expenses, and we move it forward to the BAA, the practical effect of that may be not that important. It may actually help. You're doing it quicker, right? And get ahead of, the next building season. There are other one-time requests or increases in base funding. We don't know until after Tuesday what we're committing to that will take away our box for the fiscal year 26.
Right. Exactly, which is why this is not going to happen.
That's kind of why I'm asking that question here.
Right.
You had a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Right, so the timing matters, or does the timing matter? That's sort of one of the questions for some of these things. Dave?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but when the folks testified on the various reserves that we have just the other day, based on their report,
Yeah.
I thought they said the total reserves were 1.6 billion. Billion with a B. And they explained that.
You mean like a rainy day fund and.
Oh, is that are you thinking about the treasurer? That's the treasurer.
Yeah, I referred to them as folks, but yeah.
That's okay, well,
Those good people.
That wasn't the rainy day fund.
Well, no, it was a
The cash
combination of
balance.
It's a combination of stabilization, caseload reserves, et cetera.
Right.
Transportation, all that. So when I heard 1.6 billion, and they explained, they were clear, they said that's not sitting somewhere, but it's built into the budgets, and some of it may be sitting there, et cetera. But I said to myself, if there's 1,595 million instead of 1,600 million, the world will not end. And yet, some type of a diversion, not a reversion, but a diversion of some of those dollars has an incredible impact on the people who sat here. And I know their ask totaled more than, I just using 5 million as an example. But it's hard for me to ignore that we are blessed with these kinds of reserves at a time when we're getting requests from people who are terribly needy. So I may be alone, 1 out of 11, but I wouldn't mind very modestly looking at some of that so that I didn't hurt the FY26 budget Jim was alluding to.
Right, and are there other places that we can find some money in addition? Right.
I think so.
Because we also know that, because Adam told us the governor is carrying 87 million into next year, and we know that some of that will be for education. We know that. Some of it may be for housing. We don't know what the rest of it's for. And then we have what we know about the current situation. So we'll have that last piece of the puzzle on Tuesday. But those are the kinds of things that you should be thinking about now, Dave, exactly. Where else can we find money? Split.
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the really unknowns here, and I was just talking to someone, talking to Diane. One of the big unknowns here is that we don't know what the current federal administration is going to do.
Exactly.
If we just kept things status quo, we probably could be more generous and more free to go and find ways to support things. But we don't know what they're going to do at all. And so we run the risk. First of all, I was personally concerned about the decline, the trend downward in all of our funds that Tom Kibet explained yesterday. There is a trend downward. And that's just
in the growth.
In the growth.
It's in the growth. It's not right. Our growth is slowing, which makes sense.
We don't have the federal money we've all gotten used to over the past few years. But we now have a situation where we have no idea what's going to happen on the federal level or what that's going to do to our programs. There's all kinds of places.
Do we ever?
Gaping holes.
Right, and that's true, which to me speaks of we need to be careful about the base. But is there one-time money we ought to be spending now before things get taken away, right?
Yeah.
There's that too.
The point is that when is it going to get taken? There's a word of caution here that really will help with your example of there was $157 million deficit when you started on this committee. Well, we certainly don't, midterm. We don't really want that.
No.
And, a lot of us have served here when things have been really tight. So we want to really be.
Right.
I think caution is in the wind here, not because we don't want to go, you can, right, we could do one-time money, but we got to be.
We have to be,
Yeah.
yes, and it's like the unknown unknowns. That's
Yeah.
where we are with that right now. Tiff?
I kind of forgot what I was going to say. But it was a converse of what you just said. I am concerned that there are some systemic issues that we're addressing through one-time kind of emergency infusions that don't address the systemic problems.
That's true too. I think they're
And,
both true.
and so, and therefore the base, feeding the base in the right places may be the wisest choice. Otherwise, we will need $10 million next year for the same services. Anyway.
Depends on what it is and what we can do now and what we need to think about. It's very complicated. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the first question is timing issues. I mean, you know what we're doing with BAA. Would the money actually be spent? Can they spend it? Because I'm not convinced that everybody that was testifying today knows the details of the timing of money being spent. So
And neither do we. I've got some of it.
Exactly.
So that matters. Yeah. Anything else anybody's got? I'll let you keep looking at budgets and doing what you need to do, and then we're on the floor in an hour.
Just
one more,
add,
yeah.
once the governor's budget comes out Tuesday, you are free to go and start lining up meetings with your budgetaries. I know it's a little hard this week because we're going to be very involved with the BAA, but whether it's early morning, lunchtime, if you have to do it while we're meeting, you can. But get together and try to involve, if you can, the committee liaison from the respective policy committee. But those are your meetings. But they can be helpful, and it's important that they understand because they'll be bringing back to their own committees for recommendations as well.
And that reminds me that I've heard from a number of chairs who've been very pleased with the communications of members of this committee with their members of their committee, and those things are starting to move along. And so good job, team. We're getting a nice reputation out there for working together.
We're really good people.
Yeah, well. But now they know that. So yes, start meeting about budget FY26, but we're still going to finish up FY25 budget adjustment next week. So you're going to have a week of kind of a couple of things going on. So maybe you want to make appointments to start the following week, however it's for you. But you're free to start on that once the budget's released. Okay,